Okay, we're almost at the end. We have one more talk, and then we have a discussion at the end of it. The next speaker, she represents the industry. She's a senior advisor at LME, that's the Norwegian Pharmaceutical Industry Association. She works with market access, and as both patients and clinicians, it's often frustrating to work when we wait for reimbursement of things that are already approved. On the other hand, we are interested that when approval is done or reimbursement is done, we want it to be for all patients, irrespective of income, where you live, and so on. Katrine will tell us a bit about how this works in Norway.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting us to speak at this seminar. And I was given the task to talk about sort of what we as an industry think is important in order to achieve a faster market access to Norwegian patients. So that's what I will talk about today, and I've structured my presentations around sort of those of you who don't know us. I just thought I would say some brief words about who we are as a trade association for the pharmaceutical industry. Then I thought I would give sort of an access or status update on what is the current situation of access to new therapies in Norway. Where are we now? And then go on to say about two important sort of topics that's currently being worked on that we will hopefully see that will create faster market access is the development of the system new methods and a new white paper on prioritization. And then lastly, I was also asked to see, okay, what are the current ongoing European collaborations? And I will then briefly talk about the new HTA regulation and what that can mean to patients. So those of you who don't know us, LMI is the trade association, as was pointed out, for the pharmaceutical industry in Norway. And we have about 60 member companies, both the big pharmaceutical industry that have affiliates in Norway, but we also have Norwegian startup companies in our portfolio. And fun fact, we also have member companies that produce vaccines for the fish farming industry. That's really, really big in Norway. So we have those as well. We have a quite sort of new, or we are quite new in our new strategy period, which is centered around 3 pillars. So we work within the innovative health infrastructure, which Fredrik has talked about, is mostly how we work on framework conditions on clinical trials. We try to attract more industry trials to Norway. Then we work with industry development to promote growth for the pharmaceutical industry that's here today and for new possibilities. And then the last pillar, which I will talk about today, is access to new innovative treatments for Norwegian patients. But first I thought I would say, okay, to kind of take you along to the story that I was trying to, when I was making the presentation, is to sort of, okay, where are we today? And I thought I would give you a snapshot of what is the current access landscape in Norway. And there's been a lot of media focus and attention to access to new therapies in Norway. It's been a big media topic in the last years, and it has engaged several politicians. And different stakeholders have been raising their voice on that access to new medicines is taking too long time and that this has big consequences for patients. And it resulted in last year, there was a big patient pasientoppropet. I don't know if the right translation is patient uprising, but it was culminated in 46 different patient associations collecting over 100,000 signatures in an effort to raise their voice that access to new medicines is taking too long time, and this has real consequences. And one of the reasons behind this media picture is several analyses, but one analysis that always creates a lot of media attention is the FBA weight indicator. And the reason why I show this is that it is a huge analysis. So that it's called the patient weight indicator. So it's a big analysis that has been running since 2004 in different formats, and it's the largest European study into innovative medicines availability and time to patient access. It covers 37 countries and 168 innovative medicines, and it's a 4-year rolling cohort on how they measure it. And this year's analysis, which I have taken results from today, is from the medicines that have received a marketing authorization and EMA in the period from 2018 to 2021. And here, the rate of availability is measured by the number of medicines available to patients in the European countries. And for most countries, that is the point for which the product gains access to a reimbursement list. So in Norway, that can be if you get a decision, a yes or no decision in Decision Forum, or you get uptake on Folketrygden, so the blue prescription. And as you can see, Norway has access to only 47% of new medicines approved in EMA in this time frame. And that's just above the European average of 45%. When we look at time it takes for patients to get access, and this is measured from when a product gets a marketing authorization at the European Medicines Agency until a decision is taken for reimbursement. For this year's cohort, for this 4 years rolling cohort, the average time was 443 days. Quite a long time. When we look at oncology products, which is relevant to this seminar, it takes 542 days in Norway. So quite a long time. We wanted to see, this is sort of the European analysis that our European sister organization, or how should I say, mother organization does for us. But in addition to that analysis, we wanted to get a better understanding of the local, the national market access situation. And as we saw, the time it takes for a new medicine to get access is quite long. So we wanted to see in that time frame, is there access or is there usage of medicines that have not received public reimbursement? And this figure shows that many hospital products have been sold before a positive reimbursement decision. And at the time of first observed sale of a new product, all of 54% of the hospital products had not received at that time a decision in the Decision Forum that handles reimbursement to new hospital products. And of this, in May 2023, still 28% of these were not reimbursed. So as this slide shows, there's quite a lot of number of products that have an observed sale prior to a public reimbursement decision. And this can reflect a private market sale, and it can also reflect individual exemptions, as we do not have a public data on this, so we can't distinguish the two. But the data shows that equal access, which you also introduced, equal access is one of the foundations of the Norwegian healthcare system. However, due to that we take so long time before we actually have access, and we see that there is quite a lot of private market sales and individual exemptions, we also can ask ourselves the question is, do we actually have equal access to new medicines in Norway when we see quite a lot of products being used before public reimbursement? And that's also why the government, probably why the government has set up one of the expert groups that will touch upon the new white paper on prioritization, will look at how the exemption schemes work, and I'll come back to that a bit later. However, with the background I've just shown, and it might seem that, oh, this is quite sort of a daunting picture, but there is now a momentum for change, and we are seeing a lot of new movement and a lot of new ideas taking place, and that we are sort of going somewhere. And the government has commissioned several tasks in order to prove the access to new medicines, and I'll briefly touch upon 2 of these. So for the system new methods that we have in place, and for those of you who are not aware of this is our system that sort of that basically decides if a hospital product should be reimbursed or not. So back in 2021, the government decided that the system should be evaluated, and the results of this evaluation of this system was quite daunting. Very summed up shortened, it said that the system was not set up to handle personalized medicines. There was a lack of trust to the system from external parties, and the decisions were not transparent to the public. And based on the findings of this evaluation, the government decided that it needed to further develop the system, and it commissioned several assignments to be followed up, and one of these is the new strategy for the system. So for the first time since the system's developed, it was back in 2013, we now actually have a strategy for the further development of new methods. And LMI, together with several external stakeholders, such as patient associations, have been part in writing this strategy. And it's the first strategy that we have. And the vision is that we have to create a system that is in line with medical developments and ensures fast and equal access, transparency, and involvement of relevant stakeholders. It has set up 5 prioritized areas. I've only listed up 4 that are relevant to us as an industry, which is reduced evaluation time, transparent communication, adaptations for personalized medicines and orphan drugs, and better clinical involvement. And we're very positive towards this new strategy, and we have very high hopes for how this to follow up, and especially to reduce the time it takes in order to get faster access. The next sort of big task that the government has set is a new white paper on prioritization. And this is really important because we have 3 prioritization criteria in Norway that basically, very simplistically, they kind of decide access to new innovations in Norway. And the government has set out that they want a new white paper. The current we have now is from 2016. And however, as you all know, there's been significant medical advancements since then. And it's maybe time to review the prioritization criteria to see if they can better be adapted to today's situation and also the future. The government has commissioned 3 so-called expert groups that are now working on different topics, and they will produce reports that will be published in February. And I believe there will also be a hearing after they have published their reports. And then the government or the Ministry of Health will write this together into a new white paper. For us as an industry, we have focused, there's a lot of topics we are focusing on into the new white paper, but I thought I'd mention 3 of our most important topics that we mean that should be reviewed in the new white paper. The first is that the societal effects of new medicines needs to be evaluated in the implementation decision. So today, one cannot include the wider societal benefits that new medicines can have. So for example, if you can come back to work, or the effects that new medicines have on caregivers. This is not included today in the health technology assessments. Something that we should believe that there should be a new debate on. Then our second point is that we believe that there should be better handling of uncertainty. And as you know, a lot of the new medicines, they're getting a marketing authorization based on phase 2 data, single-arm trials. And we understand that this is more difficult to do health economic evaluations on such a limited data. However, there are possibilities to have a better handling of this through risk-sharing agreements, alternative payment models. And we also see that this is the way that a lot of the medical innovations are coming with this limited data. So we need to find a way to handle it instead of saying no access due to uncertainty and high price. Today, in the white paper that we have today, it says that an uncertainty should be weighted in a negative manner, which is also something that we mean that should be changed. The last point is that we believe that there should be increased transparency in the decision-making process, and especially also that the clinician's voice should be heard more, or should be included more in the decision-making process, and it should also be very transparent on when and whom have been involved in the different parts in the decision-making process. So we are now writing a lot of different inputs. The time frame is very, very short. They started the work in September and will finish in February, so it's a very short time frame. So it's a lot of work, but this is really, really important if we want to see a change in the market access landscape. So my last point, what sort of European collaboration is going on? There's a lot of different collaboration going on, but maybe the one big initiative that's taking place and that's taking a lot of our time and a lot of the industry time and also the authorities, is the new EU HTA regulation. So this has been a long and ongoing work for several years, and it will come into force. So it will be applicable from January 2025, and it will start then with oncology and ATMP's products. But what is this regulation and what can it mean to patients? So the new EU HTA regulation, so it's a collaboration on health technology assessment, and the overarching aim is to allow for faster and more uniform access to medicines across the EU. And it basically, the aim is also to use common HTA tools, methodologies, and procedures across the EU so that you can better use of resources and improve business predictability. And the collaboration of this new regulation will happen across 3 areas. So they will work on identification of emerging health technologies, they will do joint scientific consultations, and lastly, joint clinical assessments. However, it will still be up to each country and each member state to decide if you will reimburse a drug or not, and also which additional health economic analysis one would like to ask for. So the timeline, it's coming quite quick. So it starts in 2025 with oncology and ATMP products. Then in 2028, they will do orphan products, and then 2030 full scope, so that all new approvals by EMA will go through the joint EU HTA regulation. So this is taking up a lot of time now, trying so that we are ready to go by 2025. And this is basically, this is sort of a snapshot. So if we are ready and if we're able to how should I say, deliver on all the points and all the expected gains from this new regulation is that you can have faster access to innovative health technologies because you pool the resources and you do a joint clinical assessment once. For patients, it's also believed to have improved engagement in the HTA process and increased transparency. For the industry, it's more sort of clear, coherent timelines and requirements of what is needed, greater predictability and less duplication efforts. And on a member state level, also the less duplication, shared data, and also expertise and also knowledge sharing across member states. So this was sort of a very, how should I say, short, this is a huge project ongoing, so this is very sort of simplified description of it. But that's some of the areas that we believe that are important to improve patient access in Norway. So that was me. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrine. Any questions for Katrine about the process in Norway? Yes, Sonia.
It is only a little bit better in the Netherlands, as I appreciated from these slides, and that's also the feeling I have. Now, I've got actually 2 questions. So in the Netherlands, it's like this: whenever the budget impact of a treatment is too high, the regimen is put in the lock, and then the negotiations start between the Ministry of Health and Pharma. And what would be very helpful is to have first dynamic pricing in order to see what the value is in real life, and then change the price according to that. And the other thing is that we might do cost effectiveness trials in order to get it controlled out of the lock. So we're discussing that. So would that also be something in Norway? And the second question is, you talked about UNETA, and I'm still a little bit afraid that when you have the UNETA data, that still every country is saying, well, this for price negotiations, that will still be in every individual country, I think. So what will it solve, and which problems will remain? So, and thank you for a very informative talk. I couldn't read the Norwegian, but I could think of what is in the papers in the country.
It's been a quite sort of, there's been a lot of engagement, to put it, in the papers around patient access, because it's, you know, it's crucial to many. To answer your last question, and it's a very valid point that you bring up in terms of, okay, what will it solve? Because you can have the risk of countries asking for a lot of extra data, which then will prolong the time to access. But we see it as, okay, if you have the JCA, the Joint Clinical Assessment, the timelines are being pushed quite much further forward than it is today. And hopefully that once you just have one joint clinical assessment, maybe, and if you get everyone up to date, maybe the asks for data later on will also be more smooth and you can have faster. But it is a concern that both we and also our FBA, the European Federation, is concerned with, because I think that the background for this is also that we see that a lot of different agencies are struggling with resources, and, you know, why do each individual same assessment in all countries? Why can't you collaborate more if that can bring better outcome in the end? And to your second question, how it is done in Norway, I mean, we have if I understood it correctly, towards the system in the Netherlands, it's quite similar to what we have on the blue prescription, so the outpatient financing system. If you have a budget impact higher than, I think it's 100 million Norwegian crowns within the first 5 years, then there has to be a different sort of negotiations, or you have to get approval from Parliament to ask for money, and that goes mostly for drugs that have quite a big patient volume that are. For the hospital products, you have that negotiations a lot in the system of new methods that they try to agree on and negotiate, so that but there are risk-sharing models that you can, that you have maybe introduced at one price, and then you can go down or up depending on the value that you can demonstrate further along the lines. And we also agree that, okay, if you come to the market with limited data, okay, then there has to be a risk sharing on both parts, on both ends, that, okay, we have to take some risk, but also the government, and then you can evaluate and adjust the price thereafter. If that was an answer to, some of that.
Other questions?
I'm just wondering how, regarding, for instance, those risk-sharing models and other models besides the very standard model we usually use, which is just benefit divided by cost, is that developing now in Norway? Do you see this kind of new model agreements?
Slowly. So we have the government, the hospital procurement, they have developed a framework for alternative payment models, which they call it, and are eager, and we are also, our member companies wish to have more alternative payment models, and also the government or hospital procurement says to us that they are also willing to. But I think it's trying to agree on how the risk sharing should be. But we see we are optimistic, but we also recognize that it's a difficult arena as well, because you don't, a lot of the times as well, okay, what kind of follow-ups and what kind of measures should the clinicians put in? How should we follow up endpoints, etc.? But I'm slowly optimistic as we have a new framework and it's slowly adapting. And we see the number of agreements, we measure the number of agreements, it's slowly going up. So, yeah.
I have just a follow-up to that, because I'm a bit concerned about these new ways of reimbursement that you have to put in data on how the patients are doing, let's say pay for response or something like that, because what's lacking the most in Norway and most Western countries in the next 20-30 years are doctors and healthcare workers. And if these doctors are going to do a response evaluation like in clinical trials in real world, that will steal time from the patient. So be aware of that pitfall.
And it's a very important point. And in the framework agreement that hospital procurement has designed, I think it says that a new model, alternative payment model, should not have increased administrative burden for the clinician. So so that's a really good point.
But I think there's some treatments that are more fitted to this approach. For instance, CAR Ts, like we have here, where there will be a very sort of limited number, it will be centralized and not so difficult to follow. And for other diseases that are rare, where the number of patients are low, if you look to sort of the bispecifics, which will be sort of, if approved, used everywhere. That's much more complicated for such agreement.
Exactly, yeah. And if there's already a register in place and that kind of thing as well, that's good.